I know it's been quite a while since my last review, and for that I do apologize. This is my first Assassin's Creed review out of the entire series. So without wasting your time or without any further ado, let's just get right into this. In the game you play for the first few hours is this guy named Thomas Haytham, who ends up being the father of Connor, who's the guy you play as for the rest of the game. Essentially, the game takes place in the 1700s over the course of about 30 years or so. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Mainly around in the 1770s, specifically like 1776 and around that, in a few years around there. You basically so after you beat this whole Haytham section, you find out that he's a Templar, and then basically. You stop playing as him, and then you play as Connor, who's a Native American whose village got burned down when he was a kid, and then you become an assassin. There's a lot of expository story stuff going on in terms of you like growing up. You start out as a little kid, and then you grow up to like a teenager, and then you finally grow up as an adult, and then you finally become an assassin. Now, this is one of my biggest problems with the story, is that it is very slow paced, and the game just starts out very slowly. It doesn't really pick up. There are 12 sequences in the game. And I really wasn't hooked into the story at all until like sequence 7 or maybe even sequence 8. I can't remember vividly, but it was very slow, and it wasn't that exciting, and I felt a lot of this stuff could have been cut down quite a bit. Connor as a main character is fairly boring compared to Ezio from the previous Assassin's Creed titles. I felt like he has a very narrow point of view, and he's very naive towards the world, and he sort of just makes a lot of assumptions and follows through on them. He's sort of just a very one-dimensional character, you know, like in Assassin's Creed 2, which I felt was the highlight of the series in terms of real storytelling. You have Ezio, who changed from like a sort of troublesome teenager or young adult into like a full-fledged assassin, and he had some dimension to him. He had some depth to him as a character. And Connor here, he just doesn't have that in my view. He sort of just came off as a dull character. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, the story, and this is considered, I always care in Assassin's Creed about like the historical story. Desmond's story, like it's just a complete mess in this game, as well as like as well as the other like past two games. It's just like I guess it tries to acclimate people who haven't played the series before with like a whole little expository style thing for him for like a couple minutes, but really it's just a mess. Like Desmond's father is like in the game, and you have no idea. He was never introduced in the other games. I don't believe. He just randomly appears out of nowhere, and basically I don't even remember quite what happened in Revelations. Like your guy Desmond was like unconscious in some animus dream world kind of thing, and I don't know. And then he wakes up, and now like they're trying to open some damn door in a cave. I will say that like some of the missions, you actually do play some modern day missions, which are actually very refreshing for the series. They're some of the best missions in the whole series. But then this game also has some of the worst missions. But the Desmond story is just it's not very fleshed. I mean, it's sort of shoved aside a little bit for the historical setting, but it was just very bad. And the ending of the game is just I'll discuss that at the end of the review in my spoiler section, but it was very unsatisfactory. Not quite. It wasn't nearly as bad as like something like Mass Effect 3's ending, but it wasn't very satisfying at all, considering how long we've been playing this series for. It was just unsatisfying. So the story in this game, I wasn't quite a fan. I wasn't a fan that much of the historical setting. I mean, you get to interact with some historical figures like George Washington and Paul Revere, but sometimes I feel like Connor is way too involved in the actual historical process. For example, you actually you ride Paul Revere like while he warns about the British. I just feel like some of this stuff is a little bit too direct, and I felt like it'd be better to be part of it, but not like be the cause of some of this history. I don't know. That's just a personal preference for me, but it lacks immersion when it just sort of like everything you do actually is like the cause or an effect of like of the stuff that happened in history. It just doesn't appeal to me. And Desmond's story, like I said before, it's sort of confusing. The ending's very poor. His dad comes out of nowhere. It just, I don't know, I didn't care for the story that much in this game at all.
Easy, be new here.
Alright, now in terms of the gameplay, I mean, I think the game actually plays out very well, and that's not necessarily my problem with it. Let me go over some specific aspects here. The platforming in the game is as good as it, has been. It's probably the best in the series, or the most polished in the series. It's easy to navigate and get around everywhere. It works well enough. In terms of the combat, they altered the combat a little bit. They changed the button sequence, so now you block with B, I think, or you press B when the red arrow is prompted over the enemy's head, and then you press X to counter, or you press A to disarm someone. There's a couple different types of enemies. Some of them are the heavy enemies that, like, sort of when you try and counter them, they block you, so you have to dodge them. You dodge by either A or B. I can't remember specifically. And then basically there's also these sort of like cinematic kill cams when two red triangles appear at the same time and you press B. Basically you're not in control anymore, but there's a little cool cinematic moment that plays out. I think you could do it with 3 enemies attacking you at once, I believe, but I'm not exactly sure. They've implemented guns in the game. Some of the enemies pull out guns to try and hit you, but they're not as much of a threat as you would assume. They're in the previous game, Revelations, the guys would just pull out a gun and shoot at you, and there's nothing you could do about it. It felt terrible. And there's no way to counter it. Here, the guns fire very slowly, and so you have plenty of time to dodge them. Plus, they don't even do that much damage to you. Like each one drains like a third of your health. It doesn't do that much damage. Oh, and in terms of the health system, they brought back the regenerating health after a while, instead of you having to like purchase like some medicine potion thing from the previous games. So I thought that was a good touch as well. Basically, in terms of the weapons, Connor has he uses the axe. He uses an axe. You get swords and stuff like that. Some of the new weapons, like they have like this hanging rope and like a bow and arrow. Some of these, they're not actually useful in the actual combat of the game. And I feel like the weapons, while the combat itself is very satisfying, the weapons all feel the same and they don't really feel unique. Or in other words, there's no real need to have any sort of variety because they all sort of work effectively. There's not a whole lot of stuff that differentiates like an axe from a sword in terms of like speed or damage or anything like that. I felt they don't have a unique feel to them, if you know what I mean. And basically, they cut out the weapon wheel from the previous 2 games. Now you have to go to like some menu and try and select your weapons and stuff like that. And basically, there's not really like a ton of incentive to really level up your guy. There's not like in this game compared to something like Assassin's Creed 2, where I went out and tried to get all the best armor and the best weapons. I think it was like Altair's armor and like Altair's sword in Assassin's Creed 2, and I always tried to get like the best stuff. In this game, there's just no real need for it. I feel the combat's too easy for that, and it's just unnecessary and superfluous to actually try and upgrade your guy, which is definitely a turn off for me in the game. What else is there? Oh yeah, for your missions, you don't actually earn any money, or at very least, or not in many missions, you don't actually earn any money, so it doesn't give you an incentive to actually purchase new weapons or items or anything like that. You don't earn any money. Like I literally had only like $3,000 or $4,000 or coins or whatever throughout the course of the game after beating the main story mission. I didn't even spend anything. So I feel like that turn off, considering how it was more that aspect or that feature of the game was more prominent in the previous titles. Basically, my main problem is not necessarily the gameplay. The stealth stuff in this game doesn't work. I don't play it stealth-wise, but I don't like stealth games in general. I think I made that clear. But I don't think the stealth works very well in the game. The enemies spot you very well. Besides that, my main problem is not in the actual gameplay itself, and this game just confirms my belief that having strong gameplay is not enough to make a good game. You have to have strong game design as well, and I felt the mission design here is just very uninspired and dull. A lot of these missions don't really, take advantage of the good combat in the game, and they're just sort of boring. Sometimes you just walk up to a mission icon and it just triggers a cutscene, and then you have to go to the other side of the city and trigger another cutscene, and then that might be a mission. I don't know, I don't like that part, and some of these missions, they're just sort of boring. I can't even remember them that well, to be honest with you. It just shows they're not very memorable in my mind. So a lot of these missions just aren't. They're just very dull. Some of them are like fetch quest kind of things. Some of them are just like riding around on horses and stuff. They had like this little war. They during the Civil War, or not the Civil War, sorry, but during the Revolution, you can control like different, like there's one mission where you can like sort of control like these different factions of soldiers, and you tell them, like, you order them when to fire and stuff like that. So some stuff's a little different. What else is there? You can like operate cannons and some specific things, but a lot of these missions I feel like are dull in general, and like from sequences like 2 to 6 or 7, all the Revolution stuff doesn't start to sequence 7 anyway. So I felt that was really a turn off for me as well. I mean, it just didn't hold my attention until sequence 7 or 8, where you actually started to do some fun, like some more fun missions where you know get to infiltrate boats and start to actually fight people more. I feel like there's like it just takes a lot of time. In terms of the story is slow and the missions are slow. So I mean that's just a major turnoff for me. Now on the flip side of things, the modern missions I feel like are some of the best in any mission in the entire series. Like they're a fresh retake, or sorry, they're just a fresh take in the game. They're a fresh aspect of the game because you get to like one of them you infiltrate like a boxing match, I think. You actually getting to go in there. There's like a stadium and stuff. And the final one is spoiler alert here. It's not. You actually get to infiltrate Abstergo Industries, and you actually get to go in there again for the first time since Assassin's Creed 2. I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything else about it, but I mean, you know, it was a very fun mission. It was one of the most satisfying missions in the entire series. But there's just such a like large disparity between having like these really awesome modern missions and then these like really dull, slow, and drawn out missions from like sequences 2 to sequences 6 or sequences 7. I can't remember, but like there's just such a large disparity there. Like the missions aren't consistent in terms of their quality. I felt like there's also like these other missions, like these sea missions, where basically you operate a ship and you have to like you use your cannons and stuff like that to try and destroy these other ships. A lot of people praise these sections. I don't think they're terrible, but I don't think they're that enjoyable or exciting, or at least not as much as some of these people are claiming or making them out to be. I think the boats are sluggish and really somewhat difficult to turn and maneuver properly. Basically, there's like different methods. Sometimes there's like different 2 different sail options. You could go full sail or half sail. Half sail tries to like make your cannon fire more accurate by moving your ship slower. But even at like full sail, where you're supposed to go like the fastest speed imaginable, it's not that fast, and it just, I don't know. Even at half sail, the boats don't turn as well, even though they're at a lower speed. I mean, I understand this is in the historical times where they aren't exactly the most efficient ships, but I mean, it just wasn't that enjoyable for me. And I feel like when you're trying to shoot these guys with your cannons, like the other ships, you have to literally be right next to them to get an accurate shot off in most cases. And also, your ally ship, a lot of these times you have like one or two, at least one other ally ship with you, and sometimes a lot of the times they get in your way, so you have to go around them and then try and redo the whole, get close to the damn ship and then shoot that, and then it was a little bit repetitive. It was a little bit tedious. One other thing I forgot is just the lack of attention to detail in one of the modern missions. Basically, there's like this skyscraper platforming scenario, and you're supposed to be in New York City, yet you're on top of a skyscraper at night, and there are no notable landmarks at all. In fact, they just copy and paste like the same background, like in a 360 view around the skyscraper. I mean, it is a small thing, but it's so small that they should have paid more attention to detail with that. It's very disappointing, and it's just something that that has to be done, in my opinion. It is a small thing, but that level of detail is necessary to be fully immersed in it. It's really dumb. Like if you're saying it's in New York and it doesn't even look like New York. It just looks like some generic American city, or not even American city, just any generic city. They're very disappointing for me. Aside from that, I didn't really partake in a lot of the side activities in the game, such as hunting animals. Basically, you hide in like the bushes, and then you have to like draw them out, and then like hunt them, and you skin them, and there's like some crafting system where you get to upgrade some stuff. I can't really go into detail about it because I didn't partake in it. I didn't really utilize any of this stuff. And the other side missions include, I think there's like these homestead missions. I don't know, where you do some stuff, you like recruit more guys. I think the Brotherhood kind of system of assassins is there, but of course you don't really need them. You don't really, there's no need for them, because the combat's too easy. I mean, you can handle yourself, and it just feels like some of these additions, they would be nice if if there was some sense of necessity to them, and I feel like there's just no need for them. I didn't utilize them. I hate when games have so much shit, like, or so much content in it, like this one does, but like you never utilize any of it, and the game gives you no reason to utilize any of it, so it feels like the game doesn't have as much content to it. The game takes around 10 or 15 hours to complete, and like I said before, the first several hours were very slow, and I just didn't appreciate when half the fucking game you have to play half the fucking game to actually start enjoying it, at least. In terms of the audiovisual presentation, everything looks pretty good. I know apparently they're using a new engine on here. I can't really tell the difference in terms of engine. I know in terms of the engine itself, I know that some of the areas are a lot more open compared to the other games. You get a lot more like open, plazas and things like that. But that's the only real notable difference I saw. And in terms of the audio, everything's fine. Like the voice acting's fine and everything like that. But then again, I don't really value the sounds in the game that much. Audio is not exactly the most important feature, in my opinion. So what's my final verdict on this one? Well, I think it's a good game, but I don't think it's great. I think the gameplay itself works very well, but the missions just don't utilize any of the best aspects of the combat. And there's like the story mode itself, or like the main quest, is just not very interesting to me compared to some of the other games. I'd probably give this game a solid 7 out of 10 for having great gameplay, but a very slow story. And a very slow story, a very poor ending to the game, a lot of superfluous and unnecessary features to the game that don't really impact your experience that much. And basically, those are my problems with the game, and I think they're big problems. I don't want to go into that much more detail about it, but I'm just saying that as a game right now, it's a good game. I wouldn't get it at $60. Right now, it's probably cheaper. It's probably $40 as the game's been out for a few months already. But I mean, I would recommend it. As an Assassin's Creed fan, I would say that the first 2 games are the best ones, especially the Assassin's Creed 2 in terms of story. I felt Assassin's Creed 2, aside from like the lack of a regenerating health system and the graphics were downgraded slightly, that was the highlight of the series for me. Everything else, like the Brotherhood and Revelations, were just sort of like add-on packs almost. They didn't feel like full, complete games, if you know what I mean. And this one is probably one of the weaker Assassin's Creed games. I'd say the second one, then the first one, then probably Brotherhood, and then this, and then Revelations. Just because I like the characters and the story more in Brotherhood compared to this, even though the combat in this game is a little bit better than the others. So overall, it's a 7 out of 10 from me, and I'll talk about the little controversial ending after this. So this is my final verdict, and right now I'm just going to talk about the ending of the game. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about this ending very briefly. I don't want to go on too long of a rant here. But basically, a lot of people have been upset with the ending of this game. So if you're still watching this and you don't care about the ending or whatever, but if you then by all means continue watching. But if you just a last spoiler warning. Alright, so basically, in the ending, there's these 2 gods that argue with each other, or gods or spirit, whatever the hell you want to call them. Essentially, the ending of the game, you open that fucking gate, right? And you have to like do a lot of platforming stuff and like unlock a lot of like switches, and then you get a lot of expository dialogue sequences between these 2 godlike women, or like those gods that you've seen in the past games, I guess. And they're basically arguing with each other, and they're arguing about 2 different methods to essentially save the world. One of them is essentially wants like this 2012. I guess it's like the 2012 destruction where the whole world gets destroyed by the atmosphere or by whatever. And she says like, you know, the remaining civilization will rebuild and then everyone will be happy. And the other one is saying like, oh, release me or something, or I can't remember exactly. And then I'll save it, but then like everyone will be under my control. Now there's two separate options here, but as you know, Assassin's Creed is not Mass Effect, so they give you two choices, but you're not able to choose between either of them. And Desmond picks the one where the woman controls everything, and you end up, or Desmond ends up dying, and then essentially what like there's a little bit of a thing where it's just like during the credits, it's like, oh, there's like weather storms throughout like the country or something, and that's literally it for like a minute, and then that's the end of the game. Now the ending of the game, it wasn't very satisfying, first of all, because your guy dies, and it, like I said before, I don't know if this is the end of the entire Assassin's Creed series, but it's definitely, in my view, it's definitely not a good thing to kill off your main protagonist throughout the entire series, even if his story is handled very poorly. It's just not satisfying to, towards the audience, or in this case, the player, to have that happen in the game. Now, let me just say that I've not enjoyed any of the Assassin's Creed endings prior to this point. The first Assassin's Creed ending wasn't bad. That was actually probably one of my favorite endings, and it's not even a very good ending because you essentially, it's just like a cliffhanger thing. I remember Desmond, they leave to go collect an artifact, and that's it. Second game was weird because you have like the gods or whatever get introduced. Third game's weird because you kill Lucy, and then it's sort of random and it cuts to it. The Revelations ending is basically you wake up out of your little coma thing or whatever, and then I don't know, you know the location of where you are in this game, and then this game is just that. I mean, I wasn't exactly expecting a brilliant ending, to be honest with you. You know, Assassin's Creed has never really prided itself on being, you know, revolutionary in terms of storytelling. So I wasn't upset as some of the fans of the ending. I mean, just because I've not really been impressed, to say the least, with the endings of the previous games. I can definitely understand where people are coming from. I didn't absolutely hate the ending, like, oh, I want these people to change the ending like I did with Mass Effect 3. Just because at this point I think the story is just sort of a mess and it's really hard to keep track of some of this stuff. Unlike Mass Effect, the Mass Effect trilogy, where it was like most of the trilogy was like top-notch storytelling, and then to have like such an atrocity at the end. Here, I never felt, at least in terms of Desmond's modern story, that it was handled very well and it was very coherent or very cohesive, or that it made a lot of sense to the audience. So it just that's my 2 cents about the ending. Like I said before, I did not like it at all. Just to reiterate, I did not like it. Just because I'm saying I didn't hate it does not mean I liked it at all. I was not satisfied at all at the ending. It wasn't very satisfying. I felt there was no real closure to it at all. There was like a teeny bit of it, but not very much, and it's just not satisfying towards the player in this case at all. So that's my review of Assassin's Creed 3. Not a bad game. It was a decent / good game, like the bare edge of good. But I was not. It wasn't great like the previous or like the first and second Assassin's Creed games.